Hello, good evening everybody. So, hi, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Mayong adlaw sa Philippines, good evening here in the United States. So, this will be a very quick update about the revised EVP Philippines no objection statement guidelines because nung the last update natin, there has been very little understanding of what they really would want to do. At least merong mga changes, very slight changes of what they would want to happen as far as the no objection statement is concerned. But in terms of gusto nyo makita ko ano talaga yung if there are any significant changes, unfortunately, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But kunti lang, but at least makakatulong pa rin. No? So again, without much further ado, I will start with the presentation. Mag-share lang ako ng screen dito. Okay, so again, this is the topic about the revised EVP, the Exchange Visitor Program, Philippines No Objection Statement Guidelines. So, and how it will affect not only the Filipino teachers, but also some Filipino professionals who are actually under the J1 visa program, who intended to actually take the J1 program. Hi, John Morse. Before I'm gonna start, I would like to acknowledge lang Genesis Agkaoli, for giving me some feedback about the EVP guidelines. Boss, thank you very much on that. Again, this is a disclaimer that this is just for presentation and educational purposes only. If I happen to answer your questions, I would try to answer them in a more general terms. But if you would want to have a more specific conversation about your case, please call our office or contact our office so that we could talk about your case in more details. Again, I would just like to remind everybody that at pasensya na pala pag kunwari medyo may delay yung understanding ko. I just had my second vaccination today. It was 4 hours ago, and I start to feel now the effect of the vaccine. But the good thing about that is we are all now vaccinated in the office to keep everyone safe. Okay, so again, this is coming from the legal premise that people who are on a J1 visa who are subject to the 212E, meaning kung kailangan nilang umuwi sa Pilipinas after their 5 years term and comply with the 2 years there before they could even go back to the United States on another J visa H or immigrant visa. So yun lang yung premise na yan. Quick overview lang, and if you would want to fully understand what grounds of waivers available for you if you are on a J visa or you plan to enter the United States on a J visa, you could actually review some of my videos on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook video pages, and then check on the more detailed conversation about grounds for getting a waiver. But quick overview lang, there are 5. So number 1 is the no objection statement. Used to be the fastest, the easiest, and the cheapest way to obtain your waiver. And the second one is the request by interested government agency. In the case of the teachers, this is the Department of Education in the United States. Unfortunately, they are still not supporting IJA applications. And then unlike the no objection statement, if for purposes of conversation, the interested government agency decide to sponsor your waiver, hindi ikaw yung mag-a-apply ng waiver. It's actually your employer who will apply for a waiver for you under the IJA mode of getting a waiver. Number 3 is fear of persecution. This is analogous to asylum seekers, but we're not going to go into the details of that. Number 4, exceptional hardship to a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. We will talk about that in a little bit because if hindi mo nga makukuha yung waiver mo through the no objection statement, either because you are not qualified or because it's very difficult for you to get that, then the other option that you could actually apply for is the exceptional hardship based on having a U.S. citizen spouse or a green card holder spouse, and then argue exceptional hardship. So this time, on number 4, you are going to apply the exceptional hardship with USCIS, and of course, in coordination with the Department of State. Number 5, request by designated state public health official. This applies more on the physicians. So again, thank you for tuning in. And if you have questions, just write them down in the comment section. I'll try to respond to them as much as I can. Exchange Visa Program, no objection guidelines. So review lang natin anong nangyari the last few days. On April 6, they actually issued a new memorandum. They already resumed accepting no objection statement. But unfortunately, in that particular guidelines, they actually said that they are no longer issuing no objection statement automatically. If you remember that before they actually suspended the NOS or the no objection statement ground as a form of a waiver, if you are married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder or you have a U.S. citizen child, automatically you will obtain the no objection statement, right? Kaya nga sinabi natin kanina, that was the easiest, cheapest, and the fastest way of obtaining a no objection statement. So before the pandemic, once you apply for the no objection statement, between 1 to 3 months, you will be able to obtain your no objection statement. That doesn't seem to be the case now because I think we've received a lot of feedback about the previous guidelines doesn't seem to be very clear kung ano talagang gusto nila and so on and so forth. And procedurally, this is actually a response from the EVP on one of the teachers sending an email to them clarifying ano ba talaga ang kailangan nila. So what they are actually saying is that they are still reopening acceptance of the no objection statement. With their response, hindi na nila sinabing na will not accept your application or will not automatically approve your application, but at least they actually changed the procedural aspect of it. Because dati, when you apply for the no objection statement, you are going to prepare 3 sets of applications, if you remember, for those that nag-apply na, 1 set of original documents, then another 2 sets of copy documents before you are going to send it to the Philippines. So in that process, gumastos ka na before mo na ipapadala yung application mo to the Philippines. So ngayon, pag-usapan natin kung anong nagbago doon, no? So again, initial requirements under the new guidelines now. Hindi naman nagbago doon sa lumang guidelines nila, right? So mag-apply ka pa rin ng waiver review file number which you are going to apply with the Department of State. And then i-accomplish mo pa rin yung no objection statement application form which basically you can download from the EVP Philippines website. You're still going to provide the DS 2019. And then yung number 4, you have to provide a certificate of completion or certificate of participation. People will actually send us messages asking what's the difference between the two. So yung certificate of completion applies to those who already have completed their program. Kaya nga siya tinawag na certificate of completion. Or if you are still in the program, whether you are in your 3rd year or your 5th year, ang tawag doon, certificate of participation. Kasi you are still in the program. And there are 2 sources of this. You could either get this from the J1 sponsor or you would get this or obtain this from your training institution. In the case of the teachers, ito yung mga school districts, right? So most commonly, common approach is to apply the certificate of completion or participation from the training institutions, in this case from your school. And then you have to submit the original copy of clearance from your former employer company in the Philippines. Then of course you have to pay the minimum fee, processing fee, which is on the next slide. Now, the other changes of this is that public documents, kasi dati, yung mga public documents natin, nire-ribbon natin yon. Now, but there were changes in the guidelines of the Philippines that, I think that was in 2019, that public documents like your birth certificate, marriage certificate, doesn't have to be red ribbon from the Philippine Embassy or Consulate. You can actually just approach or call your Secretary of State. So kung halimbawa, taga New Mexico ka or taga California ka, you can just call the office of the Secretary of State and have your document apostilled. So do not overthink what apostille means. It's basically analogous to a notary, notarized document, but it is just that it is the Secretary of State who are actually called apostilles. Sila yung magbibigay sa'yo ng certificate of apostille. So let's just call them AC for now. Now, private documents, certification of employment or other certifications, hindi mo kailangan again ipa-red ribbon yon. Pwede mong ipanotarize muna sa private lawyers and then you would actually go to the apostille para i-apostille yung group of. May mga iba na ang ginagawa nila, pinapa-apostille yung buong documents, right? Yung certificate of employment mo, yung other documents mo na hindi naman birth certificate, civil documents are actually those documents issued by the government agency. So outside of that, ang ginagawa nila, pinapa-apostille nila yung isa-isa. Ang mahal nun, right? So ang ginagawa namin is i-group mo yung other private documents and then i-cover mo siya ng isang affidavit. Yung affidavit is actually saying these are the additional requirements when you apply the no objection statement, and then i-apostille mo yung buong set na yun. So what the apostille actually do is to actually say that, hey, this is the same person who prepared all those documents para at least makasave kayo. Okay? So yun yung difference ng public and private documents at saka yung apostille at saka yung notarization. So the requirements now is that, again, i-clarify ko lang na you have to know when to apply for the no objection statement. So before you would be able to be eligible for the no objection statement, you have to have completed at least 2/3 or 75% of your program duration. So if you were given initial 3 years of your J1 program, then makapag-apply ka lang ng no objection statement after your your second year. So ibig sabihin, pag nanganak ka on your first year or nag-asawa ka on your first year, you still cannot apply for the no objection statement because you still have to complete your 2 years before you will be eligible for the no objection statement. Okay? So, kung kunwari na-extend ka on your 4th year, 5th year, so after your 3 years, you will still be able to now be eligible for the no objection statement. And of course, the non-refundable fee of $125 that you have to pay through the Land Bank in the Philippines. Then, ang kaibahan ngayon, again, so ito yung kaibahan nila, no? Which is actually very helpful to you. You can now send your initial requirements ng mga documents na pinakita ko on the previous slide via email. So at least nakakatulong yon, right? Una, the ease of submitting your initial requirements para before ka, kasi sinasabi nga nila, hindi na nila automatically i-approve yung na objection statement mo, di ba? At least, even at the convenience in your home, you would be able to submit these applications through online, and then maghintay ka na lang kung sasabihin nila na, yeah, you may now submit your documentary evidence through mail because your case is now ready for deliberation by the EVP committee. So, unfortunately, based on my understanding is that pag hindi ka nakatanggap nun, meaning ibig sabihin, your case may not pass their meritorious review. But again, nakakatulong ng konti. Does it really totally appease the Filipino teachers na nagkaroon ng US citizen child or married to a US citizen? Not entirely, but at least nakakatulong siya by simplifying their process of application. So, yung mga nanonood ngayon, I would highly encourage you that if you have a US citizen child or if you are married to a US citizen or green card holder, submit your initial requirements via email. Who knows that your case would be given credit, given a second chance by the EVP committee to be looked at. No? Then the additional requirements may be sent once approved by the EVP committee via mail. So I think ito lang yung nakikita ko na at least makakatulong man lang sa mga teachers na hindi ka muna gumastos ng malaki, and then you will be able to actually know your chance if you deserve a second look by the EVP. Pangalawa lang, in the new guidelines, they actually reminded everybody that submitting and paying the processing fee does not guarantee approval of the no objection request. In the cases that we've handled, pag kunwari, yung ground mo for the no objection statement is that you develop some illness while you are still in the program, I would recommend that you still go ahead and apply for no objection statement based on humanitarian ground. Kasi I think they are still going to consider that, but just be prepared with the extensive medical records or kung ano man ang basihan mo, just comply with that. We have been approved of those type of cases. At least hindi nagbago yon sa tingin ko. Ang nagbago lang talaga is yung automatic grant if meron kang anak or if you are married to a US citizen. So, with regards to, again, this is another, I think, good news with the revised guidelines na sinasabi nila. Maghintay daw tayo kasi magpapalabas pa sila ng bagong resolution clarifying and providing more details as far as the meritorious research-related cases. Kasi again, if you remember the last time, hindi klaro yung guideline na yon, right? We don't know what basically are they looking at. Anong klase bang studies ang hinahanap nila or may formatting ba to, and so on and so forth. So, relax lang tayo guys. The way I look at this is that unlike before, right, na there's a bigger number of J1 teachers who na walang anak na US citizen or they are not married to a US citizen spouse or green card holder spouse, na wala talaga silang pag-asa kasi at that time, hindi rin nila tinatanggap yung alternative arrangement. At least with this one now, the meritorious research-related cases, nabigyan ng opportunity yung mga walang anak o walang asawang US citizen na they might be able to get or obtain no objection statement provided that they will pass the meritorious research studies. How does the meritorious studies look like? Paano bang mukha nun? Ano bang formatting nun? We just have to wait for a more guideline, no? So, I think once we receive those guidelines, definitely I will go live and at least give my commentary on paano ba natin gagawin yung mga meritorious research na yun. If you remember, I think 5 years ago, they used to approve those cases naman. Ang tawag doon dati is alternative arrangement. Ngayon, it does have the effect of an alternative arrangement, but they call it now differently as meritorious research studies cases. Okay? So, again, ito lang yung general framework nila with regards to those research and studies. It has to be sustainable. It has to be suitable to the current priorities of the Philippine government, and that it will improve the quality of research and development in the Philippines. So again, wag na kayo magtanong kung paano bang details noon kasi nga maghihintay tayo ng additional guidelines that they will actually provide in the coming days. Okay, sasagutin ko lang itong mga ibang questions dito. Kunti lang naman, so I might be able to answer all of them. Okay, and again, hello everybody. Hindi ko na maisa-isa kayo kasi marami-rami din kayo. Watching from Cebu City, kumusta po? Attorney, pwede na ba mag-fiancé, mag-file this time? O naman, it was never suspended. You could still file that, but medyo mabagal lang pagdating na sa embassy. Sir Ricky, thank you for always supporting us. Are the grounds for the issuance of waiver still the same? I think so. Hindi nila binago yon. Ang nagbago lang doon, ma'am, is hindi na nga nila automatically i-grant pag ang ground mo is having a US citizen child or if you're married to a US citizen spouse or green card holder spouse. But the grounds are still the same. Sir Jess, sino po, attorney, can you say something about the NIW green card? Boss, the national interest waiver is actually higher level of visa categories, right? Even with that, there's a very limited number of that. We've been approved. I think the last case that I was approved on the national interest waiver is yung Pinoy nga na taga Sultan Kudarat. He was chemistry doctorate student at the time, but graduate na siya ngayon. He was able to invent something that is geared towards treatment of cancer. And in fairness to the doctor, he was invited to go to Germany to actually meet some of the Nobel Peace Prize winners because ganun ka-high level yung kanyang projects. So, in the case of the teachers though, I have not seen anyone being granted on an NIW level kasi mataas na category yun. But what I've seen a lot are teachers having been granted on extraordinary ability. So, in a way, magkasitahan. Magkapatid lang yung NIW at saka yung extraordinary ability. So, I would recommend that if that's the route you are going, then I would recommend that you consult with an immigration lawyer. So, the good thing about the O1 visa ang tawag doon yung sa extraordinary ability, hindi ka man mabigyan ng waiver. So, let's just say, may mga criteria kasi yung extraordinary ability. The number one criteria of those is that you have actually obtained domestic or international recognition because sa sobrang galing mo, nare-recognize yung work product mo. So you it must be your way of teaching or you develop a methodology of teaching that has been adopted by schools or state level, or you have been awarded, again, in the domestic or international level. Then the US government might grant you another 3 years extraordinary ability. The good thing about the O1 visa is it can be extended year over year. But the challenge for you, though, is you have to sustain the recognition. So again, a detailed conversation of that, I would recommend that you consult with a lawyer to guide you. But maganda yun. Even if you are already on your 5th year on a J1 visa, you could still get an O1 to extend your stay in the United States. But that O1, though generally speaking, pwede ma-convert yun to a green card or H1B. But once you are subject to the 212E, sisingilin ka pa rin ng waiver. But at least that actually just gives you additional year. Sir, Ma'am Gemma, nasagot ko na yun. Sir Jess, I hope I was able to answer that. But again, I cannot go the details about the NIW. Neil, Attorney Nick, good evening po. This is my 3rd year on the J1 visa but not subject to 2E rule. Pwede ba magpa-extend another 2 years before applying for H1B? Say, for example, on the 5th year pa ako magpapa-adjust ng status instead at 3rd year. Okay, boss, let's step back ha. This is your 3rd year on the J1 but not subject to the 212E. Pwede ba magpa-extend for another 2 years? Ang recommendation ko, boss, while you are on not subject to, mag-apply ka na ng H1B. Kagaya ng mga sinasabi ko on my previous slides, you have a bigger chance that you might get your H1B before your extension of the 2-year home residency requirement. Kasi karamihan sa inyo na initially not subject to the 212E, pag nakakuha na ng 2-year extension, nagiging subject to the 212E. But regardless of those, if you would want a peace of mind, the best remedy for you is to get an advisory opinion to really determine whether or not you are subject to the 212E. But just to answer your question, kung ako ikaw, I would change to H1B now while you are within your 3rd year and hindi ka pa mag-extend because yung timing naman ng renewal is 3 months before the J1 expires, and apply for H1. Once you are in H1, chances are you would get your green card. No? Yun yung recommendation ko, boss. If you would want to have a more detailed conversation about your situation, I recommend that you consult a lawyer. Okay? I did thank you. Welcome, ma'am. Okay. Miraflor. Attorney, in case po nag-apply ng exceptional hardship through U.S. citizen child this July pro 5th year na this coming school year, are you still able to stay here in the U.S. while waiting after your program? Okay, so ma'am, step back lang ko ha. And pasensya talaga if medyo delayed yung comprehension ko ngayon because I could now still feel the effect of the vaccine. Exceptional to U.S. citizen child this July. Pero, 5th year na this coming school year. Okay, your school year starts in August. So if you're going to apply for July, are you still able to stay? Yes. Kasi ma'am, hindi naman maka-cancel agad yung J1 mo by the mere fact na nag-apply ka ng waiver. But the moment that ma-apply yung waiver mo, your J1 sponsor will be notified that your waiver has already been approved, and then at that point, then the J1 sponsor may cancel your J1 or cut short your J1 visa. But wala pa akong naririnig na maraming naka-cancel na J1 visa by the sponsor by the reason na na-approve yung waiver nila. But in most cases, and again, if you would want to watch some of my previous videos, ang sinasabi natin, if you have a ground for a waiver and you are already in your 3rd year, I would recommend that you have to wait for the 2-year extension before ka mag-apply ng waiver. Because if you get too excited and apply for the waiver on your 3rd year, and then malamang hindi na ma-approve yung 2-year extension mo. Because the J1 visa sponsor will be notified that you already apply for a J1 waiver. So, be careful lang, no? Again, don't get too excited about getting a waiver, especially if you're on the 3rd year. Wishi, pwede ba ma-explain yung IGA? Okay, so ma'am, I would answer the question, but I will not spend too much time on the interested government agency. For the sake of the teachers, the only government agency that is interested on your behalf is the Department of Education. And we actually had consulted and reached out to the Department of Education, and as of this moment, they are not willing to support any application for waiver. So, what it meant is that, so halimbawa, alam na natin na ang laki ng scarcity of teachers in the United States. Some of the school districts are using the J1 visa program to answer their need of having teachers in the United States. At dahil mabilis yung pagkakuha ng J1, which is not supposed to, because then again, the J1 is supposed to be an exchange visitor program. It's not intended to become a work visa. Pero maraming gumagawa na mga schools nun. No? So, even with the scarcity of teachers, and I've known that there's a lot of studies supporting findings that there's scarcity of teachers in New Mexico, in Arizona, and it's actually all over the place in the United States, right? But the Department of Education is still not willing to provide or approve or accept waivers on their own initiative. Kasi ang mangyayari doon, your employer will apply to the Department of Education that some of their teachers will not be required to go home. Kaya nga tinatawag siya na waiver, no? So waiver of the 2-year home residence requirement. But it is the Department of Education who is going to recommend the waiver. So parang ganito lang yun, no? Dati, kung may anak kang US citizen o may asama kang US citizen, magpapadala ka ng application ng no objection statement mo in the Philippines. Now, if the Philippines grants your waiver, then they will recommend that you will be granted a waiver and you don't go home. So, parang IJA din. Ang mangyayari, yung employer mo ang mag-a-apply ng recommendation from the Department of Education na i-grant yung waiver mo. When that happens, then i-forward yung recommendation na yon to the waiver division. So, if that happens, magkakaroon ka ng waiver. So, yun lang yung procedure na yan. Okay? I hope I answer your question. Mary Grace, pag naka-process ba rin ng exceptional hardship waiver pero expired na yung DS 2019, pwede ba mapag-stay sa US? Okay, so depende ma'am kung anong grounds mo sa pag-apply ng exceptional hardship, right? So halimbawa, if you're actually applying for exceptional hardship based on having a US citizen spouse or a green card holder spouse while the visa bulletin is current now, then you would be able to stay legally in the United States by reason that your green card application has already been filed, but not because your waiver has been approved. So, filing a waiver does not give you authorized stay, or filing a waiver or having your waiver approved does not grant you status or give you status for immigration purposes. It actually just gives you the eligibility to now apply for H-1B or a green card, no? So, depende ma'am, kung ang basihan mo exceptional hardship based on a US citizen child, it is the filing of the green card application that gives you authority to stay legally in the US. but not the approval of the waiver. As to the strategy of waiting, procedurally kasi dapat hihintayin mo yung approval ng waiver mo before file the green card application. But if you would want to discuss more detailed your case with a lawyer, I would recommend that you consult one. Jem Cheng, may baby pa ako na US citizen but I have 2 other children na citizen ang dad at plan i-petition yung mga bata. Should I wait for them, get their decision before I file for a waiver? Ma'am, kung halimbawa, I will just assume that children are minor children and their dad is a US citizen, I would recommend na ituloy mo na yung petition ng mga anak mo kasi once they become a US citizen, additional qualifying relative kasi yun eh. No? So, if I'm going to represent you on your exceptional hardship based on a US citizen spouse or US citizen's child, I will use that other qualifying relative, in this case, your children, para magiging additional argument ko na, yeah, you have to grant this waiver kasi hindi lang spouse ko ang US citizen, pati yung mga anak ko, right? Because your children might be able to derive from the dad na magiging automatic silang US citizen. And even if they become green card holders, they are still eligible to become your qualifying relative. So I would recommend that ituloy mo na yung petition ng dad nila. Which is better, the no objection statement or hardship? So again, ma'am, if you have a US citizen child, I would still recommend that you submit your initial documentation to the EVP and hoping that the EVP will actually give you a positive response, right? Kung hindi naman, then go towards the exceptional hardship based on a US citizen child. Pero kung tatanungin mo ako, if ang basihan ko is you are married to a US citizen, will I file NOS with their guidelines now? Yeah, sure, right? Pag hindi man ako mabigyan ng favorable recommendation, then I would file for exceptional hardship. Wala namang prohibition for you to file ng dalawang grounds eh, no? So you could file no objection statement, then you could also file exceptional hardship, simultaneously, pwede mo ring hintayin yung isa, kung ma-deny, then apply the isa. What is prohibited is using the same ground. Pag na-deny ka nun, then you cannot use that again, right? So exceptional hardship. Ma-deny ka, then you cannot use the same exceptional hardship. But the no objection statement and the exceptional hardship can actually go concurrently. So you can avail of those. Magastos, but it's worth trying. Alisa, pag po tapos na yung program, last year as J1, tapos wala pa po yung waiver, kailan ba umuwi? Ma'am, there are ways of at least buying your time. So kung halimbawa, ikaw naman or yung lawyer mo, confident naman na ma-approve yung waiver mo, then you can actually change status from J to tourist visa or J to student visa. But pending those applications, so siguro after you file, 3 months after you file your change of status, hihingan ka talaga ng waiver. So you don't have to go home if meron kang, depending on how you or your lawyer feels the strength of your arguments with your waiver, then there are ways to be able to at least buy time and apply for those change of status applications. CJ, I obtained my J1 visa from Bangkok, Thailand last January 22. Once my program ends here, should I go back to the Philippines or Thailand? You could either go back to Thailand, boss, or the Philippines because the rule actually says that you could comply with your 2-year home residency requirement either from your home country or country of last residence. So in this case, this is actually in Thailand. So you could go back to Thailand and work there for 2 years while you comply with the 2-year home residency requirement, or you could also choose to go back to the Philippines and comply your 2 years there if hindi ka makakuha ng waiver. Rene, if NOS application was filed already in the Philippines but no result yet as of this time, can we apply for exceptional hardship? Yes. Wala namang prohibition to. Follow-up question lang kay Neil. I got my J1 visa in Dubai, 5 years validity and not subject to 1-2E. Do I need a new discipline for extension and reapply again for another visa? Okay, boss, let's step back now. My J1 visa in Dubai for 5 years validity. So, boss, normally kasi, yung visa validity mo is aligned with your DS 2019. So, if you have a 5 years validity visa and not subject to 1-2E ka, I would recommend, boss, mag-apply ka na ng H1B. The 2019 is basically, the DS 2019 is basically needed for you to go back, kung uuwi ka kung lalabas ka ng US. You need a valid 2019 para pag-appear mo ng embassy, makakakuha ka ng visa stamp kasi nga wala kang magagamit pabalik. But your case doesn't seem to be that. Kasi ang sinasabi mo, 5 years validity na yung visa mo. So, merong disconnect lang dun sa facts, no? But if I were you, kung talagang meron ka ng 5 years validity dun sa visa mo, apply for H1B, boss. Again, if you need more detailed discussion, please send us a message. Unless yung 5 year, ang sinasabi mong extension is on the 6th year or on the 7th year. Okay? Mark. Hello, Sir Mark. What are the chances by J1 visa holder who teach in private school in the country to get a 212 waiver? Okay, so you are saying that your J1 training institution, instead of a public school, private school siya. And what is my chance of getting a waiver? The good news, boss, actually, is hindi naman basihan pag-grant ng waiver kung ang employer mo public or private. Now, one of the factors that you would consider if you are really subject to the 212E is kung yung program mo is funded by the government or privately funded. So, kung privately funded yon, kasi private yung employer mo, chances are, hindi ka magiging subject to the 212E. So, good news actually yon. The bad news is, pag private yung employer mo, baka hindi mag-qualify yung employer mo for H1B cap exemption. Kasi the good thing about the public school system is that generally they are cap exempt qualified. I mean, they are qualified for or eligible for H1B cap exemption. It means they don't have to wait for March and April lottery for the H1B because they could file anytime if they are already cap exempt. So, I think that's the only way I would be able to answer your question, boss. But it should not be an issue kung private ka for purposes of getting a waiver. It actually gives you more benefits. But ang problema mo lang to transition from J1 to H1B. Genesis, thank you, attorney, for the generosity. Sana po may makuha tayong guidelines. Yes. Don't worry about that. As soon as I would hear that they already gave more detailed guidelines on the meritorious cases, then I will definitely go Facebook Live. Joanne, after ng J1 program, pwede po ba hindi na mag-2-year home after approve ng PR? Okay. After ng J1 program, pwede po ba na hindi na mag-2-year home rule if approve ang PR for Canada? So, ma'am, are you saying that nag-apply ka ng Canadian visa ngayon or permanent residence, right? And then, you are still on a J1 now. Pag na-approve ka, lilipat ng Canada? Yes, ma'am. Pwede mong gawin yon. But unfortunately, we have a number of clients na pumunta na ng Canada, nagiging citizen na ng Canada, and being a citizen of Canada, pwede na salang pumasok sa US without the need of the visa, right? And there are people who still would want to become US citizens or magtrabaho sa US. Kung wala ka na talagang plano na magtrabaho pa sa US, and that you would accept that you will become a Canadian citizen and be there, you will still be able to visit the United States, then, ma'am, walang problema kung hindi mo i-comply yung 2-year home residency requirement mo. It becomes an issue lang if down the road, gusto mo pa rin maging US citizen or magiging green card holder ng US. But other than that, it should not be an issue. Mark, what are the chances of a J1 visa holder who previously taught in private school in the PH to get a 212 waiver? What are the chances of a J1? Again, I'm sorry guys, medyo gamot lang. What are the chances of a J1 visa holder who previously taught in a private school in the Philippines to get a 212 waiver? So, boss, again, hindi nagmamatter kung if you go back to the Philippines to comply with your 2-year home residency requirement. It doesn't matter if you taught in a private or public school. What is important is you are physically present in the Philippines. Kasi ang program naman, ang intention naman ng J1 program is that if you were a former J1 visa holder, you've learned a lot during your program, you go home to the Philippines, and the Filipino students benefited from your new learnings after you had your J1 visa. So it doesn't matter kung private or public yung school na tinuturuan. Renee, what are, ma'am, paano na lang, pa-send na lang sa aming Facebook account, I Dream America or Nicaragua. Wishy Cubs, attorney, in my case, yung school kasi mismo, interesado for us to stay. So therefore, ang employer mismo magsisend ng letter directly to the Department of Education, right? Is there a chance ba if gano'n ang gagawin? Okay, so ma'am, sorry to disappoint you, no? Ang daming teachers or school districts na gustong i-sponsor yung mga teachers natin because that's kudos to all Filipino teachers. Sa sobrang galing nyo guys, yung mga employers nyo gusto na nilang huwag kayong umuwi. Right? And that's the reason why they would want to explore and support you to apply any form of waiver. No matter how badly they needed you and no matter how willing they would want to support you. Dahil nga hindi tumatanggap ang Department of Education ng waiver application ngayon, babasura lang din ng Department of Education yung application nila. The waiver as of now is on a personal note kung mag-a-apply ka ng no objection statement from the Philippine government or if you have a U.S. citizen spouse or green card holder spouse or U.S. citizen child, pwede mo rin i-explore yung exceptional hardship on the qualifying relative with the Department of State. Hindi siya sa Department of Education. So again, ma'am, if you would want to understand fully options mo, you can consult with an immigration lawyer. Okay? Noemi, ano pong guidelines for J1 waiver for having U.S. citizen child? So, pinakamabilis nga ma'am is the no objection statement nga, no? Then, I would recommend that still submit your application to the EVP Philippines, hoping that they will give you a second chance of i-approve yung NOS mo. But in some cases, we would actually file exceptional hardship based on the U.S. citizen child. So, maraming considerations yun, maraming arguments na babasihan mo. But to answer your question, exceptional hardship on having a U.S. citizen child could still be an option for you. Sorry, I meant private school in the Philippines before coming to the U.S. Okay, so paki-restate na lang yung facts mo, boss, no? About po sa IJA, tribal po school po kami. Ma'am, yung tribal school, then again, the BIE, BIE is supposed to be another government institution or federal government agency that could file a waiver for you. So we also contacted the BIE. No one even understand what a waiver means. Now, it's unfortunate that they don't even... okay, let me retract that. They used to have a review board just to review waiver cases. But when they actually called them, ang sabi nila, inabolish, matagal na daw yun na inabolish yung section na yon or yung department na yon. And I think that is related to the Department of Education because they used to approve IJA waivers, I think 5 years ago. They used to approve that. So the BIE, supervising the Indian schools, dumadaan sa kanila din yun and they would process waivers on their behalf, yung mga schools under jurisdiction. The same manner na yung other public school system mo are reporting directly with the U.S. Department of Education. But tumigil yun eh, no? So I think for the last 5 years nga, hindi na nila ginagawa yun and they abolished the section or department handling waivers. So hindi na nila ngayon ginagawa. Both from the BIE, the Bureau of Indian Schools, at saka yung Department of Education, they are not accepting IJA waivers. Crane, Curane. I'm currently teaching in Bahrain. Will I still be required to submit a clearance in CFO requirement? Good for you, ma'am. No. That's the good thing about people outside the Philippines. You don't have to comply with all the CFO. Okay, let me reframe that, ma'am. Anong requirements hinihingi ba natin? If you are coming to the US on a J1, wala na yung mga CFO sticker requirements. But if you are talking about the 2-year home residency requirement, to comply with the 2 years, kasi under ng EVP yun, mama, CFO is just one of the member agency on the EVP committee. So, ma'am, if you could if you could give more details dun sa question mo, so I could go back to that. Joanna, ika-third year ko na po this coming school year, subject to 1-2 ako. What if gusto ko po i-keep ang pwede po ba ako ma-extend ng another 2 years? Yes, ma'am. Kung you are allowed maximum to stay in the US on a J1 for 5 years. So, kahit na subject ka to 212E, you could still stay here for additional 2 years. So, good for you. Don't worry about the passport. Pwede mong ipa-renew na yung passport. You don't need a renewed passport to get your 2-year extension. But I would recommend na i-renew mo na yung passport mo. Yosh, mataas po kaya ang chance pag nag-apply ng NOS kapag may US citizen child and spouse? Then use the spouse ban. Kung if it won't work, then apply for exceptional hardship based on the US citizen spouse and US citizen child. Mas mataas yung chance mo ng approval mo. Syra Lu, if approved na po ba ang NBC and documents ko, pati po bang magamit ng NOS para ma-expedite ang application ko? Okay, if approved na po sa NBC ang documents ko, pwede na po bang magamit ang no objection statement para ma-expedite ang application ko? Family-based visa po ako. Ma'am, unfortunately, sana hindi ka na lang pumasok on a J1. Kasi, hinintay mo na lang sana yung family-based petition mo. Because, then again, even if you have a pending immigrant visa for being a wife of a green card holder, if you are subject to the 212E, then you need a waiver. So again, if you have a a green card holder spouse, you would still be eligible for exceptional hardship based on that fact. So that's the good news. Pero sayang lang ba? No, sayang lang na dapat na save ka from going all through the pains of these J1 waivers. Nahintay mo na lang sana yung J1 yung immigrant visa mo based on your spouse. But may pag-asa pa naman. Magagamit mo as a ground for exceptional hardship yung green card holder spouse mo. Genesis, visa extension for the next 2 years applied. You need to contact your visa sponsor. Boss, yung J1 sponsor mo, ina-apply ng yung 2-year extension mo, ina-apply ng J1 sponsor. The USCIS has no jurisdiction over J1 extension. Dapat Department of State yun. Mayflower, I emailed EVP about my case na nakakomply na ako before ng 2-year rule. Nung first time ako nag-participate as J1 2013, ang reply nila, if I have already rendered the 2-year rule, I do not need to apply for it. Correct. Is this good news for me? Yes, ma'am. Ang recommendation ko, mama, and again, I have a few slides here mamaya, ma'am, huwag ka nang pumasok on a J1. If you have a chance to apply for an H1B, mag-H1B ka na. Ma'am, may contact akong naghahanap ng, or may employer akong naghahanap ng H1B. Maybe we will be able to help you find an H1B employer. Huwag kang pumasok na J1. Right? But you are good to go. You already have complied with the 2-year home residency requirement. Ma'am, maghanap ka na ng H1B sponsor. Saralo ulit. If approved na po ba sa NBC ang documents ko, pwede bang magamit para ma-expedite? I think I answered that. Saralo. Rodinet. Sir, I finished my stint in the US noong 2016 through BIF. That time, nag-change po ang education system ng 212. So, wala na pa pong kitang work. In the Philippines, I married a US citizen in 2018. So, gusto ko na pong mag-apply ng NOS ngayon. Pero ma'am, if bumalik ka na sa Philippines way back in 2016, you already have complied, ma'am, with the 2-year rule. You don't need an NOS. You can just simply apply for a spouse of a US citizen. Mabilis yun, within 1 year lang. Ma'am Azil Pay, may facility mo ba na ma-approve ang waiver kung di na qualified age ng J1 to get hired in the Philippines? Ma'am, yung dati kasi no objection statement, if you are already 60-year-old, ground your for getting a waiver. But dahil nga sinasabi nila, submit your application, no? If you are already 60 years old, then apply for that. Then let's see kung anong positive response ba ng EVP. But if you are less than that, kasi nga bago na ngayon, ma'am, ang retirement age na Philippines, right? Na-approve na yung 55. Now, with the old rules ng EVP, you would still not qualify kung nasa 55 years old ka pa lang. No? For the simple reason na hindi ka na-qualified magtrabaho sa Philippines is not a ground for a waiver. It can be a ground for it can be used as an argument, no? But that alone is not a ground for a waiver, unfortunately. Jess, meron po akong dalawang anak na US citizen as dagdag points po, okay? Pwede po bang gamitin ang dissertation? Okay, boss, let's talk about more meritorious cases once we have a better guideline, okay? Joanna, yung binabanggit ko po na i-renew yung mismong sa visa po, not the passport. Salamat po. So, then again, ma'am, you only need to renew your visa once you go out of the US. And then, dahil nga, you need a visa to come back, then, kailangan mong dalhin ng visa at the US Embassy for stamping. Okay? Again, ma'am, hindi ko na mabasa ulit yung previous mo, no? Maraming sections. But if that's how I understood it, kailangan mo yung you only need to renew the visa at the US Embassy outside the US, right? So in that case, you have to have a valid passport for the new visa stamping. Okay, so guys, I think tuloy ko lang tong few slides ko. But continue to write your questions if you still have one. And again, thank you for sending those. So again, in the next few days, once the EVP will issue their better and clearer guidelines on the meritorious cases, I will definitely go Facebook Live at least to give you an advice on at least guidance lang, no? Kung how we go about that and paano ba kayo magko-qualify. But just to give you a heads up, alam ko maraming frustrated on the J1 regulation. It seems like they are making it more difficult for you to get a waiver. And again, you have to understand, yung purpose naman talaga ng J1 waiver is for exchange visitor program lang. It was never intended to be a work visa. So again, remind ko lang kayo, when you actually signed for the J1 program, you actually committed yourself to go back home in the Philippines. And of course, no, things change, life change. Once you are already in the United States, you would want to stay here. I fully understand that. But I will be actually having another Facebook Live. So kagaya ng isa nagtanong kanina, if you have the choice between an H or a J1 visa, I would recommend that you choose the H. Meron kaming client ngayon. She actually has a better position with the Department of Education in the Philippines. And she applied for school in the US. The school actually offered her a J1 visa. And she was able to articulate her case na, I have a very good position in the Philippines. I'm okay here in the Philippines. Kung J1 visa lang yung ibibigay mo sa akin, thank you for the offer, but I'm not going to accept that. Except if you're going to offer me an H. And I think that is a better proposition than maging excited kayo, then you are too quick and too excited to sign that J1 waiver, and then at the end of the day, 5 years later, you will be confronted with the fact that you are going to go home to the Philippines. So watch out for this. In the next 2 weeks, I will be able to have a good Facebook Live on how we're gonna increase your chance of getting H1B sponsorship. So kung wala na kayong tanong, guys, may pahabol ba? Yeah, may pahabol lang, 3. Okay. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. No? Habulin ko lang to. Curain, addendum to my previous question. I'm currently teaching in Bahrain for more than 10 years. Dito na rin po ako nagpapa-interview sa US Embassy Manama and not subject po ako for 2 years. I need to go back to the Philippines for a personal reason. When I emailed CFO, they required me the docs. Okay, so yun yung ano natin, ma'am. Yun yung issue natin kasi pumunta ka ng Philippines on a J1. So then, they will require a sticker from you for the CFO. Wala naman problema yun, ma'am. Mabilis lang naman yung pagkuha mo ng CFO requirements mo. Kasi nga, pumasok ka ng J. Ang problema, pagpasok mo sa airport, makita nila na ang stamp mo is a J1 visa, hahanapan ka ngayon ng sticker or certificate of attendance. So comply with that. It is a requirement kasi nga, nandun ka na sa Philippines ngayon. Okay? Gia, good afternoon, sir. What will happen to your citizen child if we are not fortunate to get a waiver and will be sent back? So, ma'am, try mo muna yung no objection statement based on having a US citizen child. Now, if you are not lucky there, try the exceptional hardship based on a US citizen child. So, the Department of State ka naman mag-apply and then argue your case there. But, ang recommendation ko, apply that within 9 months before your J1 expires on the 5th year. Huwag kang mag-apply ng no objection statement, exceptional hardship based on a US citizen child if you are still in the 3rd year or 4th year. You still have time to react to that. So, ang ginagawa namin, we only accept exceptional hardship cases on the basis of a U.S. citizen child. Pag nasa 5th year ka na, or if you are already on your 3rd year, at the school already or the J1 sponsor already indicated that hindi ka nila i-extend or the school is not willing to extend your J1. So, yun lang yung cases na ina-apply namin. Richard Shun. Hello, attorney. I was a J1 visa last 2015. After my J1 visa program, I went back to the Philippines and served our country for 3 years. But that was a J1 visiting research scholar. I am currently in the J1 visiting teacher. Do I still need to go back to the Philippines to serve the 2-year home residence requirement? Okay. So, yung first J1 visa mo, boss, na-comply mo na yung 2-year requirement, no? So, I don't know, again, hindi ko alam kung ang first J1 mo ba, subject ka na ng 212E noon. But regardless kung subject ka o hindi ka subject, you are already been back to the country for 3 years. So, wala na yun. I am currently on a J1 visiting teacher. Do I still need to go back to the Philippines to serve the 2-year home residence requirement? If your new J1 visa now, that says that you are subject to the 212E, yes, you are still required to comply with the 2-year home residence requirement unless you have a waiver. Mary Chris, thank you for having free webinar. Welcome, ma'am. Campi. Halimbawa, may US citizen child, tapos di na-approve yung waiver, di nag-decide na lang umuwi para ma-serve yung 2-year rule. Ano po ang dapat gawin para makabalik yung US citizen child sa USA? Maraming salamat. Okay. So, ma'am, it's the same question around waivers in general, no? So, ang nangyayari, kung ipapabalik mo yung US citizen child mo in the US, kanino mo iiwanan yung child? Sino mag-aalaga sa kayo nun? So, the child has no problem coming back kasi US citizen naman yun eh. No? The question now is, what visa are you going to apply para masamahan mo yung anak mo? So, I think that's the more challenging question for you. No? So, the child is a US citizen. So, all he needed or she needed is a US passport. Hindi niya kailangan mag-visa. But it's basically you, as a parent, na anong gagamitin niya nyo to be able to come back in the United States. Okay? Okay, just a few questions. So, 2 minutes na lang, guys. I think I am about to finish the live session natin. But then again, thank you very much for joining in. And watch out for my next Facebook Live. So, maraming salamat sa inyo. Maayong buntag, may adlaw in the Philippines, and then good night in the United States. Thank you, and bye-bye.